Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Emma Stanton too. Emma, how you do? How'd you join so quick? Emma, you crazy? She hit the join button below on YouTube and then did this as my daughter does.
Sassy.
Indeed, you'll see me doing that a lot more lately because I've said I love it. Okay, so anyways, we got fun stories for you guys. Yeah, the leader of one of the major parties in America is literally insane. And by the way, people won't acknowledge it. So that's among the fun stories we have for you guys. In fact, that's first. So you know what? Let's just get to it. Let's just do it.
All right, let's do it. Donald Trump has decided to really lean into this idea that the 2020 election should have just been handed to him. And if there's a refusal to do that, well, then there should be an election redo. That is what he wants. And he has reiterated that on Truth Social. Now, yesterday, as we had shared with you, he had posted, declare the rightful winner, or this would be the minimal solution. Declare the 2020 election irreparably compromised and have a new election immediately. Now that was what he had posted at 11:39 a.m., okay? Later at 1:46 a.m. Eastern time, he wrote, declare the rightful winner or hold a new election now. Our country, which is failing badly, knows the score and will never accept criminal election interference. Now, what was he talking about? What was he referring to? What election interference is he talking about? Well, he was specifically referring to the allegations that the FBI meddled in the 2020 presidential election and essentially scrubbed the internet of any negative reporting of Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son. Now, they like to refer to the Mark Zuckerberg interview on Joe Rogan's podcast. But if you guys can recall what he actually said in the podcast, he made it clear that prior to the 2020 election, FBI officials reached out to Facebook to let them know, hey, there might be a dump of Russian propaganda, so be careful. In fact, instead of putting words in his mouth, why don't we listen to what he has to say, but pay particular attention to the very end of what Zuckerberg says here. Watch.
The FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team. It was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. So our protocol is different from Twitter's. What Twitter did is they said you can't share this at all. We didn't do that for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false. The distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely.
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful. We just kind of thought, hey, look, if the FBI, which I still view as a legitimate institution in this country, it's like very professional law enforcement, they come to us and tell us that we need to be on guard about something, then I want to take that seriously.
Did they specifically say you need to be on guard about that story?
No, I don't remember if it was that specifically, but it basically fit the pattern.
So this idea that the FBI meddled in the 2020 election and scrubbed social media, specifically of a New York Post article that was negative toward Hunter Biden, is ridiculous because there's no evidence of that. And for Trump to use this as an opportunity to call for either the election just being reversed and handed over to him or a redo of the 2020 election is obviously ridiculous. But he says it, he's gonna keep repeating it, and pretty soon, who knows which Republican members of Congress are just gonna play along with it.
Yeah, no. So I can't stand this. The number one problem with this story, there's two issues here in the story, but the number one problem is the gaslighting, okay? So there is no such thing as a redo of an election 2 years later. There is no such thing as, now they should declare the rightful winner. Who's they? Who's gonna declare the rightful winner? who decides who the rightful winner is?
His lackeys. That's what he means.
And how? What is the process by which a magical person says you are the rightful winner and then comes and removes Joe Biden by military force and puts you in, you clown of clowns? Guys, look, I've said it 1,000 times, so some of you might be sick of hearing it. But the reason why I'm emphasizing it is because morons and liars on CNN today are talking about, well, they can't tell. They can't tell who's right or wrong because now it's the new era at CNN. And John Malone, who's a right-wing Republican owner of CNN now, is forcing them to say, I can't tell. So they brought in John Avlon today, Mr. Centrist, and he said, the real problem is Joe Biden because he called some portion of Republicans semi-fascist. He said that is not befitting of the presidency. How about the lunatic on the other side, John? The one saying that we should redo the election, which is not a thing in America, which is not a thing in democracy. The one saying I should be declared the winner right now, which is literally the ravings of a lunatic mind. That is not even, but it's not even. Avlon and the lying so-called centrists, who are all right-wingers on CNN, are now saying, no, Joe Biden is more at fault because he called Donald Trump and his followers a slightly mean name. How about all the names Donald Trump called people? Nope. No, there's nothing wrong with Republicans. There's nothing wrong with Donald Trump. Nope, you guys are making it up. You guys are overreacting. No, you stop lying to the American people. Donald Trump is at a bare minimum maniacally stupid. The minute every reporter in the country admits that is the minute I stop raving about it. I can't stand the gaslighting. There is no such thing as I am declared the winner 2 years after an election. If you believe that and you're a Republican, you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Go check yourself into an asylum right now, an asylum. 81% of Republican voters think Trump is awesome. He's rated #1 among Republican voters, 81%. Hundreds of millions of people in this country have lost their goddamn minds. So that's just a reality. Everybody admits it and I'm done with it. The second thing is Zuckerberg, the right winger, going on Joe Rogan, the right winger who just told everyone to vote Republican and telling us, oh my God, you should be really worried about this Hunter Biden story that affected the election. But wait, hey, Mark, was it about Hunter Biden? No. Then why are we having this fake conversation? So, it affected the election. Well, the FBI affected the election in 2016 when they restarted that nonsense investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails again right before the election. So should we do a redo? Should I just declare Hillary Clinton the rightful winner of that election and wipe away Trump's presidency? Make Hillary Clinton co-president now? I don't know, we're having lunatic conversations and CNN says they can't tell who's right or wrong. So I just want to understand what the goddamn principles in this country are. Okay, no, they're nuts, and you should all call them what they are, nuts.
I think, look, we keep making the same mistake over and over again, and it's actually what annoys me the most. You get annoyed at the gaslighting. I get annoyed that you don't seem to understand that it's not about them being lunatics. It's about them understanding power. They don't care about what the rules are. They want to be in charge. And they will break any type of rule. They will overturn whatever part of our democratic process they dislike or see as an obstacle to them doing what? Accumulating power. That's all they care about, Cenk. They don't care.
I know, but Anna, so first of all, that is why I get so mad at the media, because the media is the refs. So I get it. The Knicks and the Bulls are playing. Michael Jordan's better than the Knicks. And normally in basketball, you call fouls. But instead, the Knicks come out with a bat and swing it at Jordan and Pippen's head, and they murder them. And then the refs go, no, I don't see it. It's even, keep playing. Oh, the Knicks won because earlier they had murdered Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. But I can't tell the difference. I can't tell the difference. I'm not calling any fouls. There are no fouls in basketball. Well, then all the great players are gonna get killed and we're not gonna have a fair game and we're gonna have absolute madness in the country. And it is the fault, 100% the fault of the lying media who calls everything even when it isn't anywhere near even.
The media is funded and owned by the corporate world. Like, it is corporate media. The corporate media is gonna do what the corporate media is intended to do, what it is incentivized to do. So like, of course they're gonna do this. None of that surprises me. The false equivalencies, pretending like both sides have legitimate disagreements or points of view. That is what the corporate media, and especially cable news, has been doing for decades. None of that surprises me. The question is, like, how do we get to a point where the country understands that just rooting for your tribe at any and all costs ends up hurting them in the end? This is the result. What we're seeing are the symptoms of a broken system where the electorate doesn't trust its institutions because its institutions have failed them over and over again. And also today we're learning that there was a top level FBI agent who did very much get involved in trying to prevent the reporting of Hunter Biden's laptop, right? So he labeled it as misinformation, even when it pertained to reporting that was not misinformation. And then today it's reported that he suddenly retired early. It's just, there are some strange things going on, right? And I don't like the idea of any government agency, including an intelligence agency like the FBI, telling social media platforms or anyone else what they can and can't report on. So look,
hey, no, I don't agree. So look, I get what you're saying, Anna. You're right on every fact you just said, okay? But did we do a massive investigation of the FBI when they did that smear job on Hillary Clinton right before the election? Did we find out the voting inclination of every FBI agent involved in that smear? Did we find out that they were Republicans and then have them retire immediately? Did we have MSNBC talking about how they need to be criminally prosecuted? Are we asking the politics of every FBI agent? Because my guess is the overwhelming majority are Republicans. No, it's never been done. Never been done. But the minute something might slightly affect Donald Trump, that's it. I want to know what they were the Democrats. We're gonna get them. We're gonna arrest them. We're gonna do all these things. Oh, all of a sudden, we got issues with the FBI. The FBI's literally killed African-American activists. The FBI has haunted the powerless in this country for all these years. But now all of a sudden, because one of the elites is touched, and because the feelings of the right wingers are hurt, now all of a sudden, oh my God, we gotta look into the FBI, okay? No, it's an uneven playing field. And Anna, you know how screwed up the media is. But if you go to Washington right now, you won't get one goddamn liar in that city to tell you, of course the mainstream media is right wing on economic issues. Of course they're completely corporate controlled. Of course it's absurd to say that the lunatic Donald Trump would be on an even playing field with any other rational human being, let alone politicians on the other side. And of course it's insane for 81% of Republican voters to actually root for that guy and to try to put him back in charge to ruin our democracy, to destroy our democracy. But you can't get anybody in that town to tell you things that are true. So they're just gonna lie until this country disintegrates.
All right, let's move on to our next story.
State of Florida has charged and is in the process of arresting 20 individuals across the state for voter fraud. These folks voted illegally in this case, and there's going to be other grounds for other prosecutions in the future. They are disqualified from voting because they've been convicted of either murder or sexual assault, and they do not have the right to vote.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis's little publicity stunt regarding election fraud or voter fraud is currently imploding right before our very eyes. in an effort to both pander to Trump and right-wing voters who are completely convinced that our electoral system is rife with voter fraud, DeSantis decided to form what's referred to as Florida's Election Investigation Office. And recently he announced that 20 individuals had committed voter fraud and that they're being prosecuted as a result. But those prosecutions are likely to be dropped because it turns out it was the failure of the state government in regard to what happened here. So let me give you the details. Now, the 20 individuals who were arrested were previously imprisoned for some pretty serious crimes, including murder and sexual misconduct. And even though voters in Florida overwhelmingly passed an initiative, a ballot initiative that allowed for convicted felons to exercise their voting rights, there are exceptions to people who serve time for murder or for rape. And so in this case, the individuals who were arrested had that in their record and weren't supposed to vote. But the problem is they were told that they could vote by officials in Florida. So let me give you the details. Several of those arrested have told media outlets or authorities that they had no idea they were not eligible to vote. In court documents filed in 5 counties, most say at least one official government body, in most cases a local election supervisor, incorrectly indicated to them that they could vote, including allowing them to register and even sending them voter cards in the mail. And I want to give you a few of the specific examples that were reported about because you'll notice a theme here, okay? So let's start with Peter Washington, who's a 59-year-old black man from Orlando. Peter Washington received a voter registration form in the mail, filled it out and mailed it back to the Orange County Supervisor of Elections office, read an affidavit filed by authorities in Orange County Court. The Orange County Supervisor of Elections mailed him a voter card. Now there's another person, Michelle Stribling, a 52-year-old black woman from Eatonville, convicted in 1993 of second-degree murder, told investigators during an August 5th interview at her house that she, quote, could not read or write very well and did not understand questions related to her status as an ex-felon on registration paperwork. But Orange County election officials mailed her a voter card after she registered, which led her to believe that she was able to vote. Here's another individual. Again, pay very close attention to the trend here, the pattern. You've got Leo Grant, a 55-year-old black man from South Bay. He told authorities that a local election office sent him a voter identification card and was able to vote without issue. Grant told the Miami Herald, quote, I don't really understand. How did I commit fraud? I don't understand any of this stuff. And I also think it's incredibly important to juxtapose the way these individuals were treated versus how others who have been convicted of election fraud had been treated, okay? Because there were a few like legitimate cases of election fraud in the state of Florida, and they were all Republican voters who tried to vote twice or voted in some illegal way. There was no press conference announcing their arrests. Ron DeSantis didn't make a spectacle out of them. Let's go to the last graphic here. There have been 3 arrests made in the Villages, a Republican stronghold in Central Florida related to people admitting they voted twice in the 2020 election. DeSantis did not hold events highlighting those arrested, each of whom entered pre-trial diversion programs and avoided jail time. Does any of this surprise you, Cenk?
No, it doesn't, but it should be a much bigger deal. So first of all, I'm gonna tell you why DeSantis did this. It's really important for you to understand the political tricks that these scummy politicians play. And by the way, I think DeSantis should be in prison over this. I'll get to that in a second. Number one though, let's look at the disparity. These people were sent voter registration forms they didn't even ask for. This is 100% entrapment. The state, DeSantis's government, sends them a voter registration form. They're like, what is this? They're like, fill it out, fill it out, fill it out. And then they fill it out and they go, okay, great. Now you can vote, go vote, go vote. And they go vote and then you go, you're under arrest. They're almost all black. He walks them out in the morning, early in the morning, wakes everybody up, criminal lives here, criminal. You're the one who set him up and walks him out in their underweir.
Yes,
okay?
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, meanwhile, there's actually voter fraud in the state. As Anna explained, it's done by Republicans. Actual voter fraud. They voted twice for Trump. Why? Because they're criminals and they love to cheat, okay? Did they get walked out in their underwear? No. Press conference? No. Are they in prison? No. Community service and all that crap, right? But then he's like, look at scary black people. Look at how they voted illegally. You know why? No, so now let's talk about why he did it. Number one, of course, he wants to scare racist white people in Florida. Not all the white people in Florida are racist, obviously, right? But the ones that are racist, they love this stuff. They eat it for breakfast. They're like, oh, scary black man, I'm voting DeSantis, okay? That's point one. Point two, he's like, oh, look at me, I'm a tough guy. I'm stamping out voter fraud. And number three, voter fraud's a big problem. Big problem. We have to restrict all voting. We have to make sure you take away voting rights from black people, poor people, anybody that might vote Democratic, take away their rights, take away all their goddamn rights. And then finally, this is the most important one. The voters of Florida overwhelmingly approved the ballot measure that said that ex-felons could vote. Not, by the way, people convicted on murder and sex charges. Those are the ones DeSantis purposely sent voter registration forms so he could do this political stunt to, okay? But overall, both right wing and left wing, and give the voters that were right wing that voted for that credit, right? In Florida said, no. If they serve their time, let them vote, okay? But DeSantis doesn't like that because he thinks they're more likely to vote for Democrats. So this is him trying to scare the crap out of any ex-felon and say, you better not vote. If you vote, I'm gonna arrest you, right or wrong, and I'm gonna put you in jail and take away your freedom. This is the party that runs on freedom. DeSantis should spend a day in jail for every day those people are in jail, because he's the one who did it. He's the criminal who set up this entrapment in the first place.
And I want to give one specific individual a lot of credit. He's an attorney by the name of Larry Davis, and he has decided to represent some of the wrongfully charged individuals pro bono. So they will get legal representation, some of them. I don't know exactly how many of them or which individuals in particular. He doesn't want to name any names as of now, but he's gonna represent them for free. And that's so important because we're talking about people who have dealt with our justice system, likely have no resources to defend themselves against what Ron DeSantis and the state and local government has done to them. And so that representation can make all the difference. And he says this in regard to what you had referenced earlier, Cenk, the individual who was pulled out of his home in the middle of the morning, barely even dressed. Larry Davis says, quote, he was in his underwear and they would not let him get clothed before taking him to jail. There were people in his backyard who were armed and they used a helicopter. It disrupted the entire neighborhood very early in the morning. Now, again, it's really important to understand when we say that this is a political stunt that has very real victims, we're being real here. Because again, how can you deny that when you juxtapose the treatment of the man who's dragged out of his home in his underwear early in the morning to how the people from the villages who voted twice for Trump were treated, right? Now, if you suspect that someone committed a non-violent crime, maybe don't do any of what we saw with the guy getting dragged out of his home in underwear. He's not a dangerous person. And in this case, it appears that he's wrongfully being targeted because state and local officials didn't do their job in making sure that they're checking things twice and not sending voter registration forms and mail-in ballots to individuals who do not have the eligibility to vote.
Yeah, so look, I'm gonna get to the people at fault here other than DeSantis as usual. But first I wanna give credit. I normally tell you about all the things that Politico does wrong, but Politico did a great piece here, and it was a writer by the name of Matt Dixon that uncovered this. And we're always fair, give credit where credit is due. Great job by Politico in finding the facts, okay? So now, the people that are at fault on top of DeSantis is Democrats. Democrats, he's your opponent. He has done something terrible. Would you like to do something? You know that the rest of the media is not going to cover it unless it becomes a political fight. You have to make it a political fight, so they cover what a crook DeSantis is. My guess is Democrats, as always, will drop it. Oh, I don't. They'll find 1,000 excuses. No, if I was the Democrat running against DeSantis, I'd be like, look, I want those criminals from the villages dragged out in their underwear right now. Put them in goddamn prison. And if you put these people that you obviously entrapped in prison, I want to investigate the judge. Is he a Republican? Did he vote for Trump? Did he vote for DeSantis? You guys want to investigate the FBI? Let's go. I'm going to investigate the judge who also allowing this in any way, shape, or form. Probable cause. Where the hell is the probable cause? Look, guys, here. Look at how clear this is. Now I'm quoting Slate. The head of the election police, a DeSantis appointee, explicitly told local election supervisors that they were not at fault, contradicting the governor's claims. It was the state, DeSantis's officials, that were the ones that said they can vote. I want to investigate them. I want them in prison. They're the ones who did voter fraud. I want them in prison. And then what happens? A huge controversy. Should they be in prison? Should they not be in prison? And we're talking about how Republicans cheated, and should the Republicans who cheated be in prison or not? But Democrats, no. DeSantis is in the elites. So those poor guys who got dragged out in their underwear and their lives ruined, nope, that's okay. They're not elite. So Democrats think, who cares? Who cares that they're in prison? Who cares? DeSantis, he's among the elites. We can't say anything. CNN will yell at us.
All right, well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we have a positive, uplifting story regarding social workers in Texas who are fighting back against the state government and its persecution of the transgender community. That and more coming right up.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Patrick with you guys. Patrick Lynn just became a member by hitting the join button. We appreciate it, brother. Everybody else, tyt.com/join. Man, I'm in a salty mood, man. Azrael Dragon is a YouTube member and wrote Katie Porter 2024. Okay, yeah, by the way, she voted to decouple, and Build Back Better got killed because she helped to decouple. So I love Katie Porter in 1,000 ways. But they never fight. You think she's gonna fight the Biden administration in the next 2 years? No, she's gonna do good theatrics. I enjoy her theatrics, but just be careful. Like, nobody in Washington wants to fight for you. All right, go ahead, Anna.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how social workers are fighting back against right wingers and specifically Governor Abbott in Texas. Social workers in the great state of Florida are quitting their jobs because they refuse to carry out the policies that have been implemented by their right-wing culture warrior governor, Greg Abbott, who has decided to persecute families who are loving toward transgender children, and has even called for investigations for parents who provide gender-affirming care to their kids. Now, just to give you a recap, in February, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton issued a non-binding opinion stating that gender-affirming healthcare for transgender youth is a form of child abuse. So that's how it started, okay? They set the foundation for their disgusting policies of persecution. A week later, the governor, Greg Abbott, directed the Department of Family and Protective Services to investigate parents who support their transgender children and allow them to access gender-affirming medical care by their doctors. And so we even shared a specific story of a family that was in fact being investigated because they were offering counseling to their transgender child. Now, here's what DFPS, the Department of Family Services, had to say, and Protective Services had to say about this. I will resign, one staffer wrote in February in response to DFPS Associate Commissioner for Statewide Intake, Stephen Black's email guidance on Abbott's directive. Now, the same employee wrote in a separate email to a colleague, quote, I have told my boss I will resign before I report on a family whose child is transitioning. Then there was another employee who spoke out and wrote in an email to her supervisor that the directive was effing bullpoop. I like that, trying to keep the language as classy as possible, even though the rage is there. And since the beginning of the year, almost 2,300 employees have in fact left the department. That doesn't mean that every single one of them quit as a result of the terrible directives that have been implemented by these right-wingers, but several employees said that they were offended by Greg Abbott's order to launch child abuse investigations into families of transgender children. A former director cited turning it into a political issue, and questioned why employees tasked with caring for children were caught up in culture wars and legal battles. The focus has been taken so far away from child safety that I don't want to do this job anymore, said one anonymous Houston area caseworker. And the list goes on and on. And on one hand, I actually commend them because it takes a lot of courage really to quit your job, to make a point, to take a political stance and share your disdain and displeasure with policies that persecute innocent people in the state. But there's also a terrible consequence to this as well, in that there's already a shortage of social workers, not just in Texas, but across the country. Social workers have too many cases in their caseload. They're overworked, they're underpaid, and losing more social workers as a result of the lunacy that we're seeing among these culture war obsessed politicians is really gonna hurt the people of Texas at the end of the day. It's really gonna hurt children who are in fact being abused. It's crazy, but this is what the priorities are for right-wingers. It's not to make your life better. Well, the only thing they offer up is making other people's lives worse.
Yeah, so the story is both very simple and a little bit complicated at the same time. So the simple part first. So the Republicans want to use big government to intrude on the decisions that your family makes. Remember what they said in Virginia? Oh my God, they're teaching critical race theory and they won't listen to parents. So war on parents, the Democrats are doing. Well, what is this? This is literally a war on parents. They're saying if you parent your kids in a way the government disagrees with, we will enforce political correctness on you, and we will send the jackbooted thugs of the government to impose government tyranny on how you parent your kids. And we might, by the way, destroy your family by charging you with a crime for caring about your kids, take your kids away and give them to people who probably will hate them and tell them that their lifestyle is terrible and that they're evil. So they destroy the kid's psychology for the rest of his life, right? These are the monsters that are Republicans. Monsters, they're terrible, evil, immoral people. This is what they do to families in America. They hate families. All they want is, oh, I want to be the dictator in charge. You do as I tell you. My morals, what morals? Republicans don't have morals. So that's the super simple part of this story. And Republicans, are you crying that I called you evil and immoral? That's what you've been calling Democrats for 40, 50 years. And the idiots in mainstream media are like, oh, okay, yeah, they're allowed to call you the most heinous things in the world, but you better not ever call a Republican anything else. Otherwise, we'll say you're disqualified from politics. I don't care about your stupid rules. Republicans have proven in Texas that they are deeply immoral people who want to use big government to break up innocent families. That's who they are at their core, okay? So now, the complicated part. Well, the problem is we have principles. And I've told you 100 times when the Republicans go around saying, oh, I'm not gonna enforce the law. Remember Kim Davis in Kentucky? She said, oh, now gay marriage is legal? No, I don't care, I'm not gonna give them a marriage license. I'm not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do my job, right? Well, it can't work. But the problem here is these conscientious objectors are also saying they don't wanna enforce the law. And they're not, morally, they're very right. The law in this case is disgusting and evil, okay? So, but that puts them in a very hard spot. So what do? As people of principle, a lot of them have quit, okay? But now that leaves that department with nothing but right-wingers. So the minute the right wing passes a law that is reprehensible, people of good morality and decency quit, and then they win because then they have the government filled with nothing but right-wingers who can't stand your family and how you make choices. trying to kidnap your kids away from you.
At the same time, though, Cenk, I mean, it reminds me a little of what happened in Florida, where a prosecutor who signed a pledge indicating that he would not enforce laws that would persecute women seeking abortions. He would not pursue cases involving parents providing gender affirming care to their children. He got fired. Ron DeSantis came in and he apparently has the power to unilaterally fire a prosecutor who, by the way, was elected by the voters in the county that he was serving in. I interviewed him just last week on Wednesday. And so I bring that up because if you are a social worker and you have ethical concerns about what these directives are, if you don't carry out what is demanded of you by the directives in Texas, they'll get rid of you. They'll just get rid of you. That's exactly what happened in Florida.
That's because Republicans love big government. So now that's a fact. That's a fact. It's proven indisputably in this story. And if you said that on cable news, they'd laugh you out of the room and never let you on television again. They say, oh, no. We're doing propaganda here that Democrats love big government and Republicans are for small government. But what do you mean? They're using big government to break up innocent families. No. You're not allowed to say things that are true on television. Okay, well, we just said it. It's a fact. It's a fact. Republicans love the tyranny of big government as long as they're using it to oppress you with their immorality and their evil intent.
All right, well, when we come back from the break, I think Democrats have unwittingly implemented a badass strategy in forcing the right wing to step away from the culture war for just a few minutes and let the American people know what they really think about the average worker. That and more coming right up.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Casper, what do you got next?
Let's get to our next story.
Enough of this nonsense. I mean, paying off loans for people that don't want it. They want to have some bizarre basket weaving, a degree, and they want all of us, people watching across this country, hardworking men and women, to subsidize their laziness and their inability to even try to contribute to society.
Well, basket weaving sounds like a lot of fun. The preliminary research I've done into the matter indicates that there are no four-year college degrees offered to individuals who are looking to hone their expertise on basket weaving. Just putting that out there. But what you just watched was yet another example of a right-winger having a mask-off moment to let the American people know exactly what she thinks about them. And of course, this is in response to Joe Biden agreeing to forgive a modest portion of student loan debt for student borrowers who make less than $125,000 a year. Now, she's not the only one who uses these talking points where they minimize the importance of getting a college degree. There's endless data showing that individuals who have who have gone to college, who have some college degree, tend to earn more. I mean, she herself went to college and she went at a time when it was much more affordable. But anytime there is any effort to help ordinary people economically, that's when right-wingers and corporate Democrats, by the way, lose their minds. And what I love about this, and I think this was an unintended silver lining for Democrats. I don't think they intended this to happen, but through agreeing to forgive some student loan debt, what the Democrats did is they forced Republicans to get out of their little culture war bubble and tell the truth about what they think about ordinary people, about working people, about people who want to get a higher education and better their lives. On one hand, they say pick yourself up by the bootstraps. On the other hand, they'll slap you down the second your hand reaches the bootstrap, okay? That's who Republicans are. And Guilfoyle joined a string of Republicans who have come under fire in recent days for their snide responses to Biden's plan. The group includes Ted Cruz, who called graduates who will receive their loans slacker baristas. Lauren Boebert, who claimed the program funds Karen's daughter's degrees in dance theory, and Marco Rubio, who said how easy it was for him to pay off his own loans just by writing a book, everybody. Just write a book. Anyone can do that, right? Now, I also want to give you another example because Sean Hannity on his radio show was salty about the fact that this might actually help out some of his own employees. Let's listen.
The people that likely will benefit the most are middle class. Think about it. You get out of college, you're not making a lot of money. We have a lot of young people that work on my TV show. They're not making 125 grand. They're now eligible to get, in some cases, up to 20,000, in other cases, 10,000. And this is new Green Deal radical socialism.
Well, thanks for making the Green Deal and socialism sound pretty freaking awesome. But think about that, Cenk. He's mad that the people who work for him might get a little bit of financial relief. He thinks that's crazy.
Yeah. So there's two elements to this story. The Hannity part, though, is is a third one all by itself. I mean, I hear sometimes that Sean Hannity is a good guy because people have seen him tip a lot, right? Meanwhile, look at what he said about his own employees on air. What? You know how much Sean Hannity makes? He makes $40 million a year. And he's begrudging his producers for having $10,000 in student debt relief. $10,000, he makes $40 million. And what does he do? He does it, he gets that money just to kiss Donald Trump's ass. He talks for an hour on TV, and not like us, he doesn't research, he doesn't do facts. He just does propaganda, he just does talking points. It's the easiest job in the world. And he's begrudging his producers who actually prepare the show. What a sick guy. There's not a single Republican who's a generous. They're all greedy. They all dislike other people. They just want me. Which gets to the point I want to make. I think Anna's point is better, and I'm going to come back to that. Okay, but let's note their hypocrisy in this story. So Kimberly Guilfoyle, you know the scam that Trump is doing, where he's funneling money to himself and his kids that were contributions given to him by the grassroots. What Trump refers to as the suckers and losers. You donated money to me. Of course I'm gonna steal it. What do you think? I was gonna use it for the cause. So one of the ways that his family stole the money is Kimberly Guilfoyle gave a speech on January 6th that didn't even last 3 minutes. You know how much they paid her for that? Well, 3 minutes. I mean, 10,000 would be outrageous. 60,000. They paid her $60,000 for 3 minutes of speech, less than 3 minutes. So, and she says, oh, you're getting $10,000 or $20,000 relief when you actually went to school, worked your ass off, got a job, you're working your ass off to pay back those loans now. And she gets money for nothing, just robs her own supporters. But she thinks you're getting too much. Anna. Yeah,
I got to jump in because the point about her 3-minute speech on January 6th is obviously a devastating point. $60,000 for that is insane. But what's equally insane is how she and Don Jr. She's with Don Jr., right? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. She and Don Jr. were raking in $50,000 each during their little college speaking tour, which was funded, I looked into this, which was funded by the tuition and fees the students at these universities were paying. So it's amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
So your student loans went to paying Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Yep.
Because a bunch of Republican donors that are probably alumni to that school forced them to give these gifts to these con men, these criminals. And then she has the nerve to say, oh, that was forgiven. I wanted the kids to pay me the thing I didn't deserve at all, okay? Now, the top criminal, Donald Trump. He's declared bankruptcy 6 different times. We're talking about $10,000 in student debt forgiveness. Let me tell you about just one of the 6 times. He said, yeah, I'm not gonna pay you. I owe all this money, I'm not gonna pay. Okay, he's a deadbeat, total, utter deadbeat. Just one of those times. Trump Hotels and Casinos Resorts filed for bankruptcy again in 2004 after accruing about $1.8 billion in debt. So he's like 10,000 amateurs. $1.8 billion, one of his 6 bankruptcies. In total, billions upon billions, where he was like, yeah, I took it, I used it, and I'm not gonna pay you back. Why? I'm not going to, because I'm a freaking criminal. And they think that the kids are doing basket weaving and that they got too much of a handout. Because after working their ass off for 4 years in college and working so hard to pay it back now, while they go to their daddy criminal and don't notice the billions that he did not pay back. It's absurd. The minute that any Republican said it, everyone in mainstream media should have been talking about it, and every Democrat should have been talking about the billions and billions and billions that Trump never paid back. But the Democratic Party is completely and utterly incompetent, and the media sucks. Okay, last thing.
Hold on. I gotta respond to the last thing you said, because it's half true. But there was an example last week, I believe it was, from the Biden White House that I actually thought was great. So when Marjorie Greene was attacking the Biden administration over its student loan forgiveness plan, they just decided to quote tweet her, and they specifically mentioned the amount of money she had taken from the Paycheck Protection Program, and that loan was forgiven. So I like that they did that, and the White House got a lot of positive feedback because they were playing hardball, which is rare. We don't see that a lot from the Biden administration. And so I wanna give them some positive reinforcement so they do more of it, because it's powerful. People like to see Democrats fighting back, especially if it's on their behalf.
Yeah, so that's a great point. So the reason why we celebrated that when that first came out was because it was such an exception. Like, the reason we celebrate Fetterman all the time is because, hey, it's a Democrat that actually does the bare minimum and fights against his opponent. We're like, yes, finally, right? Why? Because the Democrats never do it. Anyway, but in this case, they did do a great job at it. Keep going, keep doing more of that. At least the Biden White House. Now, the reason I got frustrated at Democrats in the middle of this story is because half of them are going out there going, I don't like this, the Republicans are right. Sharice Davids, that loser in Kansas. You're never allowed to criticize corporate Democrats. Tim Ryan is doing a pretty good job against JD Vance in Ohio. I want him to be JD Vance really bad, but he comes out and he attacks this for no reason. They love to punch themselves in the face. Anyway, and every Republican is out there talking smack against hardworking Americans. Ted Cruz called them slacker baristas. Marco Rubio said, why don't you just go write a book like I did as a senator and pay off your loans? Lauren Boebert said that it was programming, giving money to quote, Karen's daughter's degree in dance theory. So if you went to college, you just studied basket weaving or dance. But again, this goes to the best point, which was what Anna started with. They're all insulting the average guy out here. And they're insulting tens of millions of Americans. And so all you gotta do is do the right thing, Democrats. Do just a little bit of economic, I would love for you to do a lot of economic populism. But even when you do a little bit of economic populism, the Republicans fall right into their own trap. Please do more of that. Please be decent and do the right thing, and you'll be rewarded politically as well.
All right, well, let's move on to some more good news from Democrats. This time it's a little local, but it shows you the kind of momentum that we're seeing in regard to labor. So let's discuss. The state Senate in California has just passed a landmark bill that aims to give fast food workers in the state more of a say over their working conditions and how much they get paid for the work they do. Now, the final version of the legislation was unfortunately watered down a little bit as a result of corporate lobbying. We'll get to those details in just a moment. You don't want to miss them. But here are some of the concerns. Here is what the legislation will do. The number one concern is we need the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, to sign it into law. And unfortunately, there is reason to believe that he might veto it. Here's why. Newsom has not said whether he will sign the bill, but his Department of Finance argued against the legislation in a recent analysis, claiming it, quote, could lead to a fragmented regulatory and legal environment for employers and raise long-term costs across industries. Now, that last part is probably correct, because if you are forced to negotiate wages with your workers, likely you're gonna have to pay your workers a little more. So it would increase costs. But when you look at the profits that are made by fast food companies, they're gonna be they'll be fine, okay? Now, what will this do? According to Mary Kay Henry, who is the international president of the SEIU, she says it will give 550,000 fast food workers a chance to sit down with government and their employers to decide wages and working conditions. I cannot overstate how significant this is. It sets the standard for what states and cities around the country should be doing to support workers. So the idea here is, instead of having workers for, let's say, one fast food franchise negotiate, unionize on their own, they're trying to increase the leverage of collective bargaining by getting all fast food workers a seat at the table as like one major unit, okay? So under US law, as Josh Edelson, a labor reporter at Bloomberg says, most workers have the right on paper to unionize and collectively bargain with their boss if a majority of their coworkers are on board. But in practice, workers in industries like fast food have found it very difficult, and unionization has been plummeting for decades. He continues to say, in fast food, SEIU is advocating state-level sectoral bargaining as an alternate form of collective bargaining, but also as a step toward winning unionization, federal labor law changes, and those long-sought nationwide agreements with the top chains. Now, before I get into how corporate lobbying watered it down just a little bit, I want to go to you, Cenk, because this is overall really, really good news. And despite corporate lobbying watering it down a little bit, the fact that this is passed the state legislature is a big deal. The question is, will Gavin Newsom sign it?
So what's frustrating is that Republicans get their politicians to do almost anything, right? Stop teaching actual history, pretend there was no racism in the country. Republican politicians are like, yeah, great, love it, let's pass laws right away. Pretend that transgender kids in high school sports is the biggest issue in America. Republican politicians are like, right away, pass the law, sign it into effect, oppress people, etc. For Democrats, why do we have to beg Gavin Newsom to do something that's obvious? What, are you for the working class or aren't you? Why is this hard? Why is this complicated? With Gavin Newsom, everything is hard. You have to beg him, plead him. And then, by the way, you can't be too tough as you're asking him to do the bare minimum, because then he'll be offended. And then the media will get offended on his behalf. And the media will write stories about how progressives offended Gavin Newsom. And that's why he punished all the workers in California. Why is this hard, Gavin? All of the unions are in favor of it. It is overwhelmingly popular in California. Why is this hard? By the way, it's the same exact thing Gavin Newsom did with the Living Wage Act. We just did a petition on it. It's 3 different US congressmen signed on, which is extraordinary, let alone unions and other parts of the Democratic Party in California. The $18 minimum wage ballot issue was supposed to go on the ballot this year. It's definitely going on in 2024. And just ask Gavin Newsom for something simple. Put it on the ballot this time around so they can get the raise right away. It's gonna pass easily. It's overwhelmingly popular. Higher wages, of course it's popular, right? And Newsom's like, no, I don't want him having higher wages. And everybody begs, oh, please, Gavin, please, can you give higher wages? No. So elect Democrats so that you could plead with them to do the bare minimum and then have them give you crumbs and then have the media declare it historic.
Now, the reason why that there's that difference between Democrats and Republicans is because they're funded by similar corporate interests, right? 100%. I mean, you have Gavin Newsom hanging out at the French Laundry in the middle of the pandemic after he essentially implements some pretty strict COVID restrictions. He's there to fundraise with his corporate donors. And so the reason why it's easy for Republican voters to get Republican politicians to carry out what they claim they want to carry out is because all you hear from Republican politicians is culture war garbage. That's it. And it's easy to deliver that because all it takes is just being hateful toward powerless groups of people who don't have the money to buy you in elections, right? So with Democrats, they're in a tough spot because they like campaigning on issues related to equity. They like campaigning on issues that would certainly appeal to any economic populist. But once they're elected, they remember, yeah, but I'm funded by those corporate donors. So when push comes to shove, I'm not really gonna do anything. And that's the issue here. So let's talk about the corporate donors real quick, Cenk, because I think it's important to understand how their lobbying efforts did lead to some provisions in this final legislation that are certainly watered down. So for instance, the California Chamber of Commerce complained that the bill's definition of fast food restaurant is so broad, it will encapsulate far more than what we think of as traditional fast food establishments and is vague in differentiating between to-go service, counter service, and traditional sit-down restaurants. To which I say, sounds great. Sounds like they're casting a wide net. I'm here for it. But what's not a great thing is that the Chamber of Commerce, of course, represents businesses who do fund politicians, yes, even in California on a state level. And so the watering down of the bill looks like this. They removed a joint liability clause that would have made the franchisors responsible for labor law violations. Okay, so there's the franchisee. So think of McDonald's, for instance. That's the franchisee, and then there's the franchisor. And that's the individual who decides to, buy one of the McDonald's stores and turn that into their business, right? According to the way the bill was written, the franchisor will not be held liable the way a franchisee would. Okay. Also, reductions in the size of the governing council. It would implement this governing council to kind of oversee this whole program and the negotiations. They were initially supposed to have 13 people as part of this governing council, but it's been watered down to 10, with 4 of the individuals representing the franchisor and 4 of the individuals representing the fast food workers. And then the bill sunsets in 6 years so the lawmakers can revisit it to see if it's working. So those are the watered down components of it. Cenk.
Yeah, so the sunset provision among all the bad provisions, I think is the worst one.
Agreed.
Because in 6 years, we're gonna have to have this battle all over again. By the way, do you wanna know why they put the sunset provision in? They never put it in when it is a right-wing law. Almost never is it ever put in. It was put in once on tax cuts that were so gigantic by George W. Bush that he couldn't make them permanent. Of course, the overwhelming majority of those tax cuts went to the rich. But don't worry, when Obama and Biden got in charge, Biden negotiated with McConnell and made 94% of them permanent. Okay, so the reason in this case that it sunsets is that 6 years from now, both Republicans and Democrats, but mainly Democrats in California, can go and get more bribes from the Chamber of Commerce. They say, okay, we might help the workers another time, so you better give us money, give us money, give us money, give us money, okay? And next time they'll probably kill it. And that's how the scam goes, because we run our politics based on bribery. So yeah, look, but I'm shocked that a Democratic legislature has done anything positive, and that's great. Credit where credit is due. Good job, California legislature. Now, of course, if they're playing hot potato and they agreed ahead of time with Gavin Newsom, we'll kill a portion of it, Gavin, and you kill a portion of it, and then we'll just diffuse blame. And then even though we control California 100% supermajority, we'll pretend there was nothing we could do, right? But in this particular case, good job, California legislators and all the Democrats there. But Gavin Newsom still collecting bribes from the Chamber of Commerce while he makes his decision.
When we come back for the second hour of the show, we are going to stay on the topic of labor because a new poll shows that there is overwhelming support for unionization efforts here in the United States. We'll give you the numbers and more coming right up.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.